Thank you everyone for joining. We'll go ahead and get started. My name is Jenny Barker. I am the Chief of Party for Fishwise. For this event in particular, in the two webinars, we had more than 80 people pre-registered, and it looks like we have people from around the world, so welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Just quickly, some logistics. My goal is to do about 20 minutes of presentation and then allow 10 minutes for questions. Please feel free to post your questions as you have them while I'm presenting. There's a Q&A button where you can post a question and I'll respond once I'm done presenting, or my colleagues online may be able to respond to you in writing. There will also be some poll questions, some you've already filled out, but other than that, really just feel free to sit back and listen and learn a little bit more about where SALT is. This will be recorded and available if you have colleagues who can't participate. If you're having any technical issues or can't hear me, please go ahead and put that either into the Q&A or the chat. And I also wanted to alert you that there is a SALT 101 webinar that really talks about the nuts and bolts of SALT. So I won't spend much time today covering that. While I'll give you the necessary context, you can review that information on our website at www.fishwise.org/SALT. So what is the Seafood Alliance for Legality and Traceability? It's a public-private partnership between USAID, the Walton family, Packard and Moore Foundations, and is implemented by Fishwise. The designers of SALT believed that progress in the traceability field was being slowed by what should be interrelated work occurring in isolation. Central to SALT's work is uniting traceability conversations and work streams into one coherent dialogue. SALT was created to support work on seafood traceability challenges, particularly those that no one group can solve alone. We believe that sharing traceability knowledge can spark creative solutions. Collaboration is hard, but it is necessary, and strategic collaboration can unite people and promote change. SALT is a 5-year contract, $1 million a year to cover staff and convening people and sharing information. SALT is not a grants program and will not be issuing funds. As a reminder, these are the 4 SALT objectives. What's really driving our initiative is to expand accessible, interoperable, and electronic catch documentation and traceability, to increase the capacity of seafood producing countries to adapt catch documentation and traceability systems, to incentivize the seafood industry to adopt as well, and to identify ways in which traceability can be used to support human and labor rights for all seafood workers, their food security, livelihoods, and well-being. So who have we engaged thus far? SALT was cooperatively designed in its first year. We hosted 4 meetings around the world and put out a survey to gather input, resulting in us engaging 187 organizations from 37 countries to really build our SALT network. That valuable input formed SALT's strategy on work we need to move the needle in seafood traceability. We also talked to many of you who could not attend events, and you were instrumental in supporting us as well. Who were some of these organizations that participated? Here's a list of those who attended or completed our surveys, and they really do help to make up what is an ever-expanding SALT community. Supporting us through the co-design process was the advisory committee, which was a diverse set of organizations and governmental institutions from around the world. If you can see, the list here includes the Embassy of Japan, the EU, in addition to important organizations doing work on the ground, like the Walton Family, like the Walton Family Foundation and WWF, who is leading the global dialogue for those strategic linkages. And members really are diverse, and we're considering expanding this group in the future. And so please keep that in mind as you want to, if you want to participate with SALT. So what's our strategy? There's a lot of information on this slide, but it really encapsulates our main focus as SALT based on what we heard from the SALT community through co-design. The 2 main themes featured in the middle of the graphic, the key stakeholders on the bottom, and the key strategies of engaging underrepresented groups and creating partnerships for public welfare really hold the strategy together. Based on the data that we received in the first year of SALT, in consultation with the Co-Design Advisory Committee, we settled on the two main thematic areas. It's important to recognize that these were present in more than half of the collaborative actions proposed during the SALT data labs. So when groups came up with innovative ideas about how to address traceability, they, in 18 of the 33 collaborative actions, these themes were present. The first one being incentivizing comprehensive electronic catch documentation and traceability, or ECDT as we call it. The idea of a comprehensive system means capturing economic, environmental, and social data related to seafood products in order to identify and prevent illegal, unreported, or unregulated products from entering markets, to support and strengthen effective fisheries management, and to support legal and equitable human welfare conditions for seafood laborers. To effectively incentivize ECDT, SALT will work to understand the barriers and triumphs when using traceability as a tool. We will also work to understand the full return on investment for ECDT from that economic, environmental, and social perspective. With that information, we'll be well poised to develop a set of comprehensive principles. So when approaching comprehensive ECDT systems, what are the key things you have to consider? The information systems in use by the seafood industry and producer countries often do not support sharing of data for multiple purposes by multiple users. A lack of sufficient interoperability hinders the ability of data and technology systems to efficiently realize the potential of ECDT. SALT will work with groups to analyze how to best create these principles and guidance for the community at large. While SALT will work with many different audiences, it will be necessary at times to focus efforts on particular audiences given the scope and the funding of SALT. The first is producer countries. Understanding that some of the most challenging groups to get buy-in around ECDT are at the fisher level or in developing country governments, we really want to engage them and the NGOs to partner with them. And the second main group is industry. And while industry represents a large group, focusing on the parts of the supply chain who struggle the most with traceability will be our focus. In particular, mid-supply chain companies or producer countries, fishing companies. So how will SALT do this? We will bring together existing resources and information on electronic catch documentation and traceability initiatives through a website so people can easily access relevant information. The SALT website will be launched this summer. We will convene people in person at events and connect people to experts or other like-minded individuals where possible. We understand that people lack dedicated time, space, and facilitated opportunities to come together and share their findings and best practices. We intend to host a fail fest of sorts that will feature the strongest challenges people have encountered with ECDT and how they overcame it. Finally, we will develop new products like a SALT Seascape to enhance the understanding of what is happening globally, and will make that information more digestible and easier to find. The SALT Seascape will be a map of all the work happening globally in traceability, sortable by region or the type of work. Also, there's a lot of work happening that may not be getting publicized or written about because people are busy doing the work. SALT understands that we have to go to people to learn about their work and to tell their story. For example, this summer, staff will be visiting the National Fishermen Cooperative Society Limited, which is a major fisheries co-op of Belize that focuses on the lobster and conch fishery. They have always been focused on sustainability and are now working to make their products traceable with the support of TNC and the US State Department. We want to capture their pain points and understand how they progress to where they are now to influence our principles and to understand what motivated or incentivized them to take action. So after hearing all of that, just to clarify, our theory of change is that connecting people through networks, sharing information with them, and facilitating new knowledge exchange and learning will improve their understanding and uptake of comprehensive ECDT. This is another way to kind of think about what SALT will do as this collaboration and learning effort. We will curate existing information, as you can see at the top there. SALT's tapping into something that's necessary in the information age, given all the sources and types of information available. Some call it curatorial journalism, which is filtering through all the publicly available information and news to synthesize concepts. Or being a social librarian, when you're enmeshed in a field of activity, acting as a curator, a filter, or an educator. SALT will work to play that role in the traceability space. As an example of that, we will manage a calendar of relevant events and attend global meetings, offering quick summaries of key points for those who couldn't attend. We will develop some new tools and information, as I mentioned before, around this, like the Seascape or the traceability principles. But really, SALT will act as, I guess, a traceability connector, which is taking all of that information, people we've met and know, and linking them with like-minded organizations or potential partners. We will host learning events around the world to support those connections and work to expand our network to create transformation. Now, what does this really look like? I think people talk about the inherent value of networking, but what does that mean? And I wanted to share a few examples of what we've been able to do with SALT. At our last event, in particular in February, a new tech donor came and offered feedback that was really great for us and definitely worth noting here. They said they got an incredible understanding of the landscape of who's working on traceability. And beyond just knowing who's working on it and who's out there already, it was really valuable for them to understand what people have tried and what has failed. And that allowed them to identify potential gaps where their work could step in and fill from a technological perspective. And so it really gave them better insights into what issues they should be working on. They said there were at least 2 quality projects that they wanted to speak further about potentially supporting after that event. Another example is at our EU events in our Bangkok data lab last year. We connected an enforcement agency with a South African fishing company who was tracking illegal fishing that they were observing, and they were trying to share that information more broadly, but they didn't really have an outlet for it. So we connected them with the enforcement agency to help facilitate that. And we also connected labor rights leaders in Thailand to enforcement agencies as well to look at some human trafficking issues they were observing. And finally, a large multilateral investment bank reached out to inquire about relevant parties to meet with on a recent visit to Indonesia to expand their fisheries portfolio. So SALT was able to connect them with at least 5 projects and organizations working on traceability there. So knowing all of this and having this as strategy, we embarked on the Partner Lab. And as you can see, we're a fun crew. Half of the people who attended had attended a SALT event before, and so they found it worthwhile enough to come back to participate with us. And half were new. And part of what the success of this event was linking with another seafood technology conference called SAFEIT, where SALT also facilitated a panel, but was a really good opportunity to bring stakeholders together in one place. We had new companies present like Avery Dennison and Trace Register, and we had new government representatives from Senegal and from Ghana. And one of the key things that was really great and presented itself in Bangkok at the Partner Lab was this understanding that we are SALT. While the SALT project through Fishwise will implement key activities, the SALT community is really the driver for how this movement goes forward. You know, SALT and Fishwise will give the community the information they need to do that, a place to meet online and in person, but this truly is a group effort. I wanted to highlight a few of the outcomes from the Partner Lab. The full report is online at fishwise.org/SALT. And some of the work that we were doing there directly links to SALT's mandate and our work moving forward. And some of the ideas proposed were for partnerships in the room based on other work that people were doing and their desire to collaborate in the traceability space. I just wanted to call your attention to a few. Important work was discussed on empowering workers through connectivity at sea to help promote worker voice and better human and labor rights. The Global Fund to End Modern Slavery requested information on supply chains that could assist in their development of a screening tool that can estimate the forced labor risks that companies have in their supply chains. And there was a big idea around scaling investment into ECDT globally, which was suggested and rooted in pushing a larger agenda around human capacity for ECDT globally. And this group was looking for partners interested in pushing that discussion forward. In addition to those, the principles conversation was really important for SALT to understand how we should be convening people and the best process for facilitating the development of such principles. We also gained important insights into what barriers and incentives for ECDT could be and how we could approach those. So if any of this sounds interesting to you, please reach out to us and let us know. We plan to follow up with the groups in the next 2 months to see if there has been any progress, and we really want to link like-minded people. So how can you engage with SALT? There are a lot of different ways, and we see it really as a spectrum of engagement. The SALT community, as you can see the sort of bar at the bottom, is the broader network interested in the topic of traceability overall. Our network is nearly 500 people at this point, and you don't have to sign up for anything. You can just be part of that community, both receiving information and sharing information about your experience. But if you're thinking that guiding or actively collaborating or sponsoring work under SALT is more an interest for you or your organization, then considering being part of a SALT coalition, which is where people are really thinking about taking combined action as part of the alliance, might be a good opportunity for you to engage in a more formal partnership with us. So finally, here are some really specific ways that you can engage with us in the coming months. We're going to be pretty busy. So the new SALT website, as I mentioned, will be launching this summer, and we want to know your stories and experiences. So please share that information with us at the SALT email listed on the screen or salt@fishwise.org. We are considering expanding our advisory committee to include people who are interested in our goals and our approach. And the advisory committee really helps to influence the SALT agenda. We usually have quarterly calls with updates on the process where we solicit feedback. And if that's something that interests you, please email us as well. In addition, if you want to be part of shaping and developing the principles, please let us know. And overall, any of the collaborative actions that came out of the partner lab, again, please let us know. The next key point where you could really influence, or we could have a strategic partnership under SALT, is around our learning events or our field visits. So we will start planning our next learning event as part of our strategic planning process for the next fiscal year. And learning events are going to be an important way annually for us to share what we're doing and to meet people in person. We want to do events that are relevant for a region or can spur action in a specific area. So if that's something that is of interest to you and you might want to partner with us, please let us know. And as I mentioned before, we really want to capture and tell the important stories from the traceability field. We've done some of that in Indonesia already. We will be going to Belize this summer, but SALT will be looking for future sites as well. We want to visit diverse sites around the world that are working in SALT's main focus areas and conform our work, so please share ideas you may have. And finally, we would love to get together in person. We'll be doing lots of travel in the coming months. We'll be at the Seafood Expo next week in Brussels. We will also be part of the CWeb Seafood Summit. We'll be doing a lightning round presentation there, in addition to co-hosting a workshop on ethical supply chains and worker voice with colleagues at Fishwise. And this is really, our role as SALT is to have an eye towards whether or how traceability could be a tool to address or support change for humans adversely affected in the seafood supply chains. And finally, we've been accepted to the World Seafood Congress, which has a focus on innovations in seafood supply chains this year, and we'll be presenting on SALT and trying to expand our community there. So if you would like to talk in person at any of those events, we'd be really happy to speak with you and find out more about your work. So I will stop there and just thank you so much for your time. I'm going to ask you to complete a final poll and then to go ahead and offer any questions in the Q&A, and I'll do my best to answer it. For some reason, I am unable to answer those questions. I will follow up with you separately in order to answer them for you. Thanks so much.